I am Don Patterson, and we represent the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress and the Augusta-Richmond County Historical Society. And Jim Robbins, you are a veteran of World War II in the U.S. Army. Tell me when and where you were born again.
Stephen County, Georgia.
All right. And what date?
September the 13th, 1923.
Right. Now, you went to school there for a while.
Sylvania High School. I went to Sylvania, what they call it, high school.
Right.
Well, then it was on 11th grade, 11th grade in school in the country.
Right. And then, now you moved to Miami, right?
Moved to Miami in 1935.
Right. And what did your father do?
My father was a carpenter. He worked with the U.S. engineers. Well, while we were there, he worked with the U.S. engineers over on the beach, converting the hotels in the barracks, changing from hotels to barracks for soldiers.
Oh, all right. And tell me again how many brothers and sisters you had.
I had 3 half brothers, 1 half sister, and 2 whole sisters.
So let's continue from here then, and you tell me about your high school education. That you didn't finish, did you?
When I was in the 12th grade, I liked about 3.5 months, something in that neighborhood, of finishing the year.
Right.
And we, I was drafted in the service.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. From there, what?
And then you went to Camp Landing, right?
Yeah. Well, my first trip was on a train from Landing, Florida, to Camp Hahn, California.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then you did basic training there, right?
We took our basic training at Camp Hahn.
Right.
We went all the firing ranges, the rifle range.
You qualified on M1 and
M1, yes.
Did a lot of marching?
Well, the longest march we had was 25 miles.
Oh, you did a 25-miler,
yes,
huh?
But that's when they had about 4 to 6 ambulances following the battalion of soldiers, which is 800 men now. There's a lot of people involved. Anyway, across the desert during the day, in the heat of the day, and they allowed you to take 1 extra pair of socks, so you change socks in the process to cut down on the blister damage, but you still had blisters.
Yeah.
But it took some standpoint. I made it.
You made it.
I made it.
Without blisters?
I had blisters, but I made it.
Yeah, I did a 25-mile and I had blisters too. Anyway, when did you get into the anti-aircraft? Now, you did it while you were there?
We did that while I was in the camp on the desert, yes, sir.
All right, so you had, what were the weapons again? The
40 millimeter.
40 millimeter.
Rifle, and well, we were taught to use the rifle grenades, and they put the attachment on the end of the rifle.
Right.
And mount them, and you try to use a grenade to propel it with a dummy round. They call it dummy.
Yeah.
Anyway, we learned to do that. How you angle your rifle at different angles from the support of a sandbag, and fire at the targets. Yes.
And you did that on the desert too?
Yes, on the desert.
All right, now on your 40 millimeter, what kind of targets did you all shoot at?
We used mostly sleeves.
And they were towed by what?
By Avenger torpedo bombers.
So you made 2 trips out to the desert, right?
They were about probably from 2 weeks to a month at a time.
Oh, 2 weeks to a month at a time. Okay, then you got, then you went to disembark to go to the Pacific Theater, right?
Yeah,
and where was that?
We took a ferry boat with troops on it. This was a ferry with the paddle pusher type ferry. It pushed us down the bay, the inner parts of the river, the backwaters, into Fitzgerald. The reason they done that so they didn't want the spies to determine how many men or what was going on board the ship. We climbed land. Well, what do you call them?
The rope, the net.
The net on the offside of the ship, so nobody could see what was going on.
On the outside then.
On the outside. So.
Yeah.
Well, everything was going on the docks and on shore just as usual, but they were loading us on the offside.
Wow. Now, what was the name of that ship?
The Nordum.
The Nordum. And what country was it registered to?
It was a Dutch ship.
Dutch ship?
Yeah.
Now, tell me about the living conditions in there.
Well, the living conditions was you were in racks of bunks in the cargo holds, and we got a lot of fish, frozen fish, to eat en route over there. And it was preserved in salt, and they soaked the salt out of them and fed them to us.
And you got something else on there
And,
too, didn't you?
They had crates on top of crates of boiled eggs.
Boiled eggs.
We could go to the mess hall and get as many boiled eggs as we wanted just about any time they wanted them.
Really? Will you eat boiled eggs now?
Well, I do occasionally. You know, when you have children, you go off to Easter, you know.
Right. Now tell me about I know you took showers on there, and they were
Well, the showers, it was saltwater showers.
salt waters, yeah.
Okay.
Not quite as good as fresh water, was it?
The facilities for the bathroom, like I was telling you, was kind of remote, kind of crude. There were troughs that took the waste away, okay, and you took care of your body needs, whenever. But anyway,
But the odor down and below the holes was pretty bad.
the odor gradually grew in the hold of the ship, so they had to put those air scuffles on the decks to funnel the air down into the hold of the ship. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And how many days was it on there? You were on that?
18 days.
18 days. And then you landed where?
New Caledonia.
All right. And you were there a little while at New Caledonia.
Maybe a week at the most. If I remember correctly.
All right. And then what did you board? The same ship again?
I boarded this back on the same ship, Nordum, and went to the Guadalcanal.
All right. You went to Guadalcanal. And what did you do at Guadalcanal?
As far as we didn't never really land there. The ship didn't go ashore for some reason. The beach wasn't suitable for a landing craft to come ashore there. We brought in our barges. Everything moved on barges. I remember correctly. Everything was unloaded there was coming on barges.
And then what'd you do with your weapons and everything? You had to clean them?
Well, that's where we decosmolined our 40 millimeter gun.
Now tell me about that cosmoline. That's pretty tough stuff, isn't
All
it?
the cosmoline is like a gum that you can't remove unless you scrape it off, and then it takes a lot of elbow power to clean it with swabbing.
And you didn't have any help from solvents, did you?
Didn't have no help from nobody.
And how long were you there at Guadalcanal?
Guadalcanal about 5.5 months.
5.5 months. Did you set up your equipment in an area or protect anything?
The 40 millimeter gun crews were set up around the bombing strip, B24 strip. I don't know whether it was one squadron or more than one squadron, but there's quite a number of airplanes there.
Now, didn't you tell me there was a B-24 that came in and...
B-24 come in one evening. I don't know where he come from. He just showed up, and he dropped a smoke bomb almost on number 5 gun section. And we were on the guys had hot loop phones to all the guns, the whole battalion. And they were asking the battery headquarters for permission to fire on him. So we knew it was an American plane because it had a star on it,
Yeah.
And they told us to don't bother him, let it be.
All right. So that was basically the only incident that happened around there.
That was the only plane that put a scare into us anyway. Other than just being on alert all the time, unexpected was always there.
So did you ever have any of the enemy planes show up?
Not there on Bougainville we did.
Okay.
Not on Guadalcanal.
All right, so you were there 5 months, and you got on LST then?
no, we got back on the LST at Henderson Field, and that's the evening that the P-38 blew up on the end of the strip.
Yeah, tell me about that P-38
And he
again.
was sitting on the end of the strip, not too far from the shore, and Henderson Field runs horizontal to the shore, and the P-38 was sitting there, and the car was on. All of a sudden, it was on fire, and it had a full load of ammo on it. The 20 millimeters, as far as 50 calibers, the top gun it had on the ammunition on board the plane was blowing up, and we had to take cover and stay away from it while it was going on. We watched it, but it was.
So you had shells whizzing by you, huh?
It was going everywhere.
All right. So you boarded ship there on LST and went somewhere else, right?
LST.
So where'd you go from there?
We went from Bougainville,
No, you went from
Guadalcanal to Bougainville.
Bougainville.
Yeah.
And so when you got to Bougainville, what did y'all do?
Well, like I say, we landed on Parada Island that night, and that night's when the Japanese come in, drop bombs all around that island, and send up those water spouts and phosphorus going everywhere, like being the 4th of July and New Year's and everything else all at one time.
So y'all just kind of hung loose there that night, huh?
You say lay in front of your belly underneath the truck, we'll hang it loose.
Yeah. So what did y'all do then after that? Did you set up?
Well, after that, we unload the ship the next day on the LCTs,
Right.
from LSTs to LCTs.
Right. That's landing craft tank, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then they took us ashore.
Mm-hmm.
Then from the shore we went south, I'll say south to me, down the beach and set up along the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Every so far there was a 50, and then offset from that, if you say about no more than 30 yards, there was a multiple 50.
Mm-hmm.
The same gun crew. Every gun crew had a multiple 50.
Mm-hmm.
Had a 40 millimeter multiple 50. I'll tell you what, if they'd try to come in on us with landing craft, we could hurt them.
You really could have hurt them. Now tell me what you did with your things. I know you had to level them, right?
No, the machine gun.
Not the machine guns, but the 40 millimeters you did.
40 millimeter there's a whole battery of 40 millimeters set up in the string right along the beach to protect the beach in case they try to come back in and try to retake that area because there's a fighter strip there.
Now you told me you had to level them though, right? When you set them up.
The longitudinal girder had levels on each end of it, and the outriggers had levels on it. Where you level the gun, make sure. So you had to orientate your gun with crosshairs, put it in the deflector on the end of the barrel. You slipped it in the end of the barrel, and you bore sighted it on a target. You can pick out a target several thousand yards away, and then when you bore sighted your gun barrel right on one target, you threw in the slewing clutch and see if the electrical data to the oil gears on the gun everything was in sequence, and it would tell you where you knew where you was orientated between the two units was the barrel of the gun just sitting and vibrate like that. Just talk to you.
Is that right?
They knew you was on target.
All right. Now, was it here that a B-24 crash landed in the water?
The B-24 crashed in the water on Guadalcanal.
On Guadalcanal, huh?
We went down to the beach that morning thinking we were going to have target practice. You had training periods in a combat area just like you do everywhere else. They keep you sharp, try to keep you sharp all the time. And this B-24 come in and started getting lower and lower and lower and lower, and I was like, God, he's going in the bit of drink. And sure enough, he belly landed in the drink, and the 4 engines was heavy and tipped the plane up forward, and he sunk nose first, going down. And the crew that got out of it, they climbed out the back door. Where the back doors was on the plane, there was no doors there. Because that's where the machine guns were mounted.
Right.
And
the waist gunners.
And the trappers for the machine guns. Anyway, the crash boats come off from shore and went out and picked them up.
All right, now back to Bougainville. What did y'all do up in Bougainville?
Bougainville, there one night there we had an air raid that we actually fired 6 rounds with our 40 millimeter.
Mm-hmm.
The searchlights was sweeping. They had one searchlight right down the beach from us.
Mm-hmm.
And they picked up the plane that come in. But we don't know where, we never did know. There was no radio communications or anything to tell us what was going on. We had to go by sight and hope you were doing right, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we asked permission to fire on it, this plane. You could see it, and then you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, it just was going to the clouds and otherwise. And then they told us to cease fire, you know, sports gun. And so the only action we saw there was the first night we were there, the bombers dropping bombs all around.
Right.
They dropped bombs other nights. They hit our battery CP and blew up a prime mover and did some damage, but didn't hurt anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like playing checkers. It's hit and miss.
Hit and miss stuff, yeah.
The electronic gear and the modern equipment they have now, there was nothing like that during World War II.
Right.
You had to go from scratch. Most of the time, you were bore sighting or either bracketing on whatever by, like you take your coordinates on a target that you couldn't see, that'd give you an elevation reading, an azimuth reading, horizontal reading, and you'd find, they'd say, give me 3 rounds to bracket in on a target. And then say they change you so many degrees elevation and so
Right.
many degrees azimuth. And then you'd fire 10 rounds for effect.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that one evening. We fired indirect fire at targets.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know where we were shooting. The mouth of caves, the observation post was picking out for us. You couldn't even see the observation post.
So this was at night then?
No, it was in the daytime.
Oh, it was in the daytime?
They gave us coordinates to
So you had forward observers calling in
forward
targets.
observers picking out targets for us.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know what you. It's best you didn't know what you were doing.
Right.
If you didn't,
You didn't want to be that close anyway, did you?
If you didn't know what you were hitting, it didn't hurt you.
That's right.
Then you didn't.
Right. So how long were you on Bougainville now?
It was on Bougainville about 7.5 months.
7.5 months. All right. So after Bougainville, where did you get
We
sent?
boarded back on LSTs and mounted our guns. There was 4 guns on the deck of the LST, lashed down with chains and locked in on the deck of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And what they were for? They were for surface fire against another ship, airplanes, or whatever you're confronted with. We were trained to go through the whole realm of whatever you was confronted with, what you could be confronted with.
Now, was this where you got into the storm? Was this where you got into the storm?
No, never got into the storm. Was between Guadalcanal and Bougainville.
Oh, really? Yeah.
When we lost our lifeboats, they beat up against the cables, broke loose and moored to the ship. Beat up against the ship. The boat navies, big arms that go out. You've seen them, and it beat the lifeboats up against it to knock them all apart. They cut them loose and they cut them adrift.
And tell us about the propeller too when it came out of the water.
Well, when the LST is about between 3 and 4 foot long. They're built like a bathtub. All right. When that night during the storm, they come up on top of the groundswell, both ends would be out of water. And when they dip off and go back down the trough of the wave, when the propeller would start digging back in, it'd go fluff. You hear it first, and then you get all this vibration. It sounds like the ship was going to fly apart.
Yeah.
You hang on to hang on the side of a bunk or wherever you're at, and try to make everything stay together.
All right. So when you left Bougainville, where did you head for now?
Bougainville was headed for Luzon.
For Luzon.
Oh.
All right. Tell us about Luzon. What went on there?
For Lunga and Gulf. Okay. Well, Luzon, we pulled in there early in the morning, right about daylight. They were laying down the barrage ashore. This is a large area now. This wasn't just a. There's over 100 ships in that flotilla. They were laying down the barrage for the landing, and the surf was up, and some of our landing craft got capsized and everything. Quite a number of people lost their lives there. Because of that. Anyway, there was 3 kamikazes coming in after daylight. One of them dove into the cruiser Louisville. One of them dove into the battleship Massachusetts, and the other one dove into a cargo ship, set it on fire. Anyway, everything was happening. You know, the guns were firing. This battleship was firing the 16-inch. The Massachusetts was firing 16-inch guns, and with some of the guys on board the LST had put cots underneath the front gun tub, like 40-meter gun tub on the valve LST. Put them up on there. They would pick up those cots and hold them in suspension in midair and rattle them just like a deck of cards. And they'd finally settle down to the deck of the ship.
So how was the Massachusetts close to y'all then?
Massachusetts was that close enough to concussion of the guns.
Concussion, yeah.
Enough to drive hammers in the side of your head.
Wow. All right. So, how long did that last? The bombardment? Did it? Was
I'd say until
one day.
I'm guessing our time wise. I'd say 9 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, okay. So it started early in the morning and
started daylight.
A few hours in duration, huh?
Yeah.
So when did y'all go in?
We didn't. They couldn't get us on. They couldn't get us in. They couldn't ram the beach with LSTs with the normal landing part. So we had to wait till the next morning when they get the barges in place. They got 30-foot barges, ram them into the beach with seagoing tugs. Tugs ram them into the beach for us. And then we nosed in LST in the end of the barge and lowered the ramp, opened the door to load the ramp, and went in across the barge onto the beach. And it was all the 2.5 ton truck could do to get on shore, to get down close enough for us to hook our gun. With practically a 4,200 pound, over 2 tons of gun, we had to more or less manually booger that sucker up the beach to hook it to the truck. You get any picture of that at all?
Yeah. Well, now, when you were doing that, was there any fire coming from the Japanese?
As far as it was more or less unresisted. As far as like I said, the Dagupan, that town, I say little town, a little flat area with houses. The houses there are built like you've ever been in Ybor City in Tampa, Florida?
No.
Well, the houses are built with the 2-story, the upper deck, the top story kind of comes out over the street. It's odd, the construction of that area, you know. And we were going through that, towing our gun, and it was steaming fire. The bullets were ricocheting off the road, and so they told us to get off the truck. Get out of the truck, get in the ditch. So we stayed there, and Burke, after a little bit, Burke said, "The hell with that." He said, "We ain't taking no more of that, let's get out of here." So he gave orders for Lit to move. So in the first place we went to, I remember starting with San Carlos. And we set up our gun near San Carlos for the first time. We stayed there for a few days. And it took us 3 weeks, hop, skip, and a jump, to go from Lingayen Gulf to Manila. It was 150 miles. It was about 3 weeks.
Did you well, you would go a little ways and set your guns up?
Yeah. Wherever they thought was a hot spot, that's where we set our guns up at.
Did y'all get to fire any of the weapons on the way up there to Manila?
Not that. It's odd, but I'd truthfully say no.
Manila, I hear, was really...
Well, Manila now, Did you ever hear of a 240 millimeter howitzer?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
All right.
155s and two. Yeah.
Well, anyway, they bombarded Wall City in Manila. Wall City was like a millionaire's area, all right, with a high pyramid type fence around it. And those darn heavy guns like that, it blew that fence all to pieces.
I hear they pulverized Mount Manila, didn't they?
They had to pulverize that area. They tried to, we dropped leaflets on the civilian population. It was all done, and the next day when we went across the Pasig River on pontoon bridges, they stopped us right across the river because they put some projectiles in the highway, just like those over in Iraq and Iran.
Yeah, the IEDs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd point detonators up, you know, as if you run over them, they blow up.
Right.
You set the truck, the weight of a truck would set one of them off. But anyway, I'll tell you, that's the most unpleasant morning I think I spent the whole time I was in the service. There was green blowflies by the millions, billions, everywhere. And we brought our lunch, you know, and the canisters on the trucks, you know, they bring your lunch to you. Anyway, and we tried to eat our lunch, and some of the guys were so disgusted with the flies until they threw the rescuers away.
Is that right? Just so many of them, huh?
There's a lot of dirty, unpleasant circumstances that people don't even know about.
Yeah. And so, what did you do now? After you entered Manila, what did
anyway, after, well, we set up right on the end of a pier. Our gun was set in fire order right on the end of a pier, and the pier got out into the bay there, you know, in Manila Harbor. And we sat there for better part of a week, and no action at all as far as that goes. We just protecting the ships that was in the harbor, and it was. Our job was more or less set up to begin with as a protective measure.
Right.
After it was already, the dirty work was already done. I was lucky to be in an outfit like that. Seriously.
Now, at one point, you changed from the 950. What was it, 950?
Well, that was on Bougainville.
On Bougainville, and
Yeah.
you went to the 180 something.
No, I went to the 951st.
Oh, you went. What was the first one?
199th.
One, all right, and then to
To the 951st.
right.
Okay.
Now, your unit did shoot down some planes somewhere, didn't they, on Luzon?
Well, see, the only place we prayed with a plane shot down was in the convoy on the Indian Ocean. Okay. Well, right at sunset one evening, we was going along about our business. Okay, about 10 knots. That's about all the LST would do. Anyway, that's 1.1 miles an hour. That's per knot. Okay. Okay. Anyway, and these three planes come in right on the sun, right on the deck. You know, right deck level, and the one plane. The fire was coming to him, and he was trying to get away from it, you know what I mean, being shot at. And he was down to the left of our section of ships. I'm thinking of 100 ships now. Lines of ships, you know, in line. Anyway, and he got, all of a sudden this yellow smoke started leaving a smoke trail, you know, like he was leaving the smoke behind. Anyway, and he went to drink. We had to stop and try to pick him up and nothing else. He just kept right on going.
But your ship shot at him, though, huh?
Just. And another thing that happened in China Sea when it was on the way to Luzon was this lifeboat off a ship, a metal craft, not like a lifeboat, a small lifeboat, was floating on the water, and. They waited until there was a safe distance away from it, and the patrol craft, Navy patrol craft, sunk it because they couldn't go to it because the Japs had been making note of their activities, they would tie mines to the bottom of that lifeboat and blow you up, see? And, well, a lot of that happens on the way up there. The 32 days we were on that LST between Bougainville and Luzon. The cruiser, I don't know the name of the cruiser, it was a British ship, British manned ship. But it took a torpedo dead center in between. They had three stacks on it.
Yeah.
All right, high one in the middle and two small ones, okay? And there was this big hole inside the ship. Where it entered, where all the damage, it did the damage interior. I mean, and they don't know whether they lost lives or not, but anyway, we dropped discharges one evening. The destroyer escorts come in there, not too far from us, and dropped some discharges that evening. They didn't know didn't know whether the submarines were or not there, whether they were there or not there.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were taking safety measures.
Yeah.
They were trying to keep them away from the ships that had personnel on them. There was more damage to be done. I don't know.
All right. So after you were out there on the Manila Bay, and what happened after that? Anything happen?
Well, I'll tell you what. This is just pleasant happening now. You know, nothing to do with blood, guts, and water, and just
Right.
This seagoing tug come in and tied up the end of this pier, and they so there's one or two of the guys on board come over to the gun crew and said, "Are you guys interested in a monkey, a long-tailed monkey?" They had it on board the tugboat. They said the captain had told them that they couldn't keep it no longer; they had to get rid of it. So some of the guys agreed to. You know, they took care of it. They nicknamed her Hetty Lamar, after Hetty Lamar. And so this is it's a pleasant thought thing. It changed the face, okay? Anyway, so we took care of Hetty, so we got to Luzon, and we housed her in the tail of an old Betty bomber that was on the end of this international airport. That's where we wound up setting up our last firing position, and put in the tail, then the bubbles on the Betty, you know, on the tail gunner, and she made that her home. What happened to her now, I don't know, but anyway,
Y'all left her there.
Crawford and Protac, some of the machine gunners, man and machine gun, they were in charge of her care. Named the Head Lamar.
All right. So was that the last station that your unit was in?
The last station was in the international airport, just south of Pasay, on the island of Luzon in the Philippines. That was our last firing order position.
Now, is that where you heard about dropping the bombs? Where ending the war?
But that's when we heard when they dropped the bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So you got the word from, I guess, somebody had a radio.
I'd say through the grapevine. I couldn't say well.
Now, you heard Tokyo Rose, didn't you?
Well, we had a 593 receiver. Okay. I don't know, that's what I was talking about earlier.
A troop type receiver, is that what it was?
I guess it was, but we wanted to. We just happened up on things, you know. I mean,
yeah.
Just along the way, you know. Anyway, you sit on the beach at night when it was real calm and there wasn't no static, you know, it was very clear. All the bolts and nuts and screws that go out of heaven.
Right.
Anyway, and listen to her, and she was always pleading for you. Why don't you give yourself up, folks? Why don't you do this? Always, why don't you? Why don't you? And she had a voice that I'll always remember, like in my own mind, in my thought pattern. I always will remember how she sounded.
Yeah, and she played good music too, though, didn't she?
Well, occasionally she'd play American music.
Yeah.
Yeah. She had a variety of things.
Mm-hmm.
She entertained you.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't get disgusted and listen to her talk, she was all right, I guess.
Now, the day that they declared that the Japanese surrendered, was there a lot of celebration where you were?
Well, it wasn't a celebration you would think. It was the military's. It was more or less, it was kind of a letdown,
Mm-hmm.
as well as elevated circumstance in any way.
Mm-hmm. So, how long did you stay down there before you left Luzon?
Manila?
Yeah.
Well, we were there until from December the 9th, 1945, until about December the 10th, 1945. We were there almost a year.
44 to 45, almost a year, huh?
Yeah, all right. And we shipped out of there on about December the 10th, 1945.
Mm-hmm.
We got back in Frisco the day after, it'd be the day after Christmas that same year, in 45.
Okay, and
I was discharged on January the 9th, 1945.
now that was what, exactly 3 years?
3 years to the day.
To the day, huh?
Right.
Where were you discharged from?
I was discharged. We went back to I stayed on a troop train from Camp Stallman. We boarded the train there, and we were sent back to Landing
Mm-hmm.
in Florida. And I was discharged at Camp Landing. Then we boarded a bus, went on the bus back to Miami. I lived in Miami.
All right, now, after the war, what did you do for an occupation?
I went to work for 2 weeks after I come home. I went to work for Texaco,
Okay,
and I worked for them 35 years and 3 months.
35 years and 3 months. Now, tell me about how you got your high school degree.
Well, there was a little bitty ad in the paper, a little notice in the paper, a little caption in the paper. I wouldn't even call it a paragraph, saying that if you get your records, and turn them into your educational people in the area you lived in, it's to the school board. And so
Now, where were you living then?
I had June call
Mm-hmm.
Miami Jackson High School in Miami, and so then later I called on.
Now, you moved back, you were in Miami at first, weren't you?
No, not when I was discharged, I was in Miami. Yes.
Yeah, okay, and then
Okay.
Texaco, you were in where? Where were you working?
I worked in Miami 8.5 years, and in Tampa 27 years.
Okay.
I was in Florida, but I was in 2 different places.
All right, then you moved back to Scriven County then, right?
I moved back to Scriven County in 1982.
Okay. Now, that's where you got your records and everything, right?
My records were in Miami, but
Right.
I was born in Scriven County.
Right. But then your wife got the records from there, and you got your degree from Scriven County, didn't you?
I got my degree in Scriven County at Statesboro High School Library.
Ah.
All right. But anyway, am I saying this all right, Craig? Anyway, I got Miami Jackson to mail my records to me. It's photostat copies of all my records from the 8th grade up to the 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tony Phillips from the Board of Education in Bullock County.
Mm-hmm.
He processed everything there was 8 veterans received their diplomas that night at Statesboro High School cafeteria. And the merchants of Statesboro furnished us with caps and gowns, and we splashed out that direction.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And what year was that now?
That was in what, Craig?
10 years ago.
How many years ago?
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
All right. So you were a proud high school graduate, and were you still?
I tell my grandkids I graduated high school.
Is that right?
And I got the sheepskin to prove it to them.
Yeah. And so anyway, how many sons and daughters do you have?
I have
Just total number.
I have 3 daughters and a son that was born with a defective trachea, and Randy couldn't stay with us. So like 2 weeks, being 5 years old, he died.
Okay, and so you got 3 daughters, and how many grandchildren?
Well, how many grandchildren?
Well, you have to, does it count that he's got 8 stepchildren?
Yeah. So how many grandchildren, including step-grandchildren and...
Well, all total, we got them at one time, it was 22.
22 of them, huh?
Okay, about that.
Now, not having a high school education kind of kept you from advancing in with Texaco, is that correct?
Well, I couldn't confront the company with that because it sold out to Chevron.
Oh, they sold out
Okay.
Chevron, yeah.
But if they were still active in this area,
Yeah,
I think that I'd be at liberty to go to them and tell them just how I appreciated the circumstances, the way they transpired through the years.
right.
It happened the way it did, okay?
Is that right?
So I don't have no regrets, but anyway,
Well, what would you say to young people today about, being in World War II?
well, I tell you, being a young guy, being born in the country, and been taught to salute the flag and give honor to the proper things in manner that I was raised in the proper manner, and my mother and dad did a fine job.
Great.
Okay?
Well, Jim, I want to thank you for your service to our country in World War II on behalf of the Veterans History Project and the Augusta-Richmond County Historical Society, and I wish you many more happy years.
Thank you. I'll be 89 years old my next birthday.